Hi everyone, it's Jill Foster here for Penny Black. Thanks for joining us today as we take a peek at more new stamps and dies from our newest collection, Be Merry. This is the fourth in several Take a Peek videos, which we will be sharing over the next couple of weeks. All of our new products from this collection will be available in our online store beginning August 11th. And before we begin, I wanted to mention that this video is designed to help you take a closer peek at our new collection and share some tips and hints as to how some of the cards were created. But don't worry, we will also have instructional videos coming soon that feature some of these new products and card designs. And if you're looking for a how-to tutorial or card making demonstration right now, be sure to scroll through the videos here on our YouTube channel, as there are many that feature techniques that can be used with these new stamps and dies too. Today, let's start by taking a peek at some of our scenic stamps. I just love working with these amazing images. They really make it easy to create cards that have a definite wow factor. And just as a side note, before we go any further, when we get to looking at the cards, you will see a complete list of product numbers used on each card shown on screen in light gray. Once this release is made available on August 11th, any of those product numbers can be searched in the Penny Black online store or website, which I will link for you below in the YouTube description box. This first cling stamp, Dressed in Snow, is a beauty. Here I've stamped it with my stamp positioning tool. I've used the Misty by My Sweet Petunia. I stamped it onto smooth Neenah Solar White cardstock. I colored onto the stamp with Tombow dual brush pens, which allowed me to use multiple colors to ink the one singular stamp. I also added Versamark ink and embossing powder and heat set it before removing it from my stamp positioning tool. Once everything was embossed, I masked off the lower portion of the image, the snow, and added distress inks to the sky using an ink blending tool and a foam pad. And a white gel pen was used to add the falling snow. This technique, when I'm saying it now, sounds a bit wordy, but it really is quite simple and the results are amazing. And I hope to have a video soon for you soon so you can see this technique in action. Using a similar technique, I created this card with this really stunning stamp called Peaceful Moment. I love being able to make the bird bright red to stand out against the other elements of the stamp. And by embossing everything with clear embossing powder, before adding my distress inks to the sky and the background, I was able to preserve the lighter frosty color on some of those branches. And again, I hope to have a video for you on that. Here's another gorgeous scenic stamp. It's called Tweet Conversation. And you can see, once again, that I had to add some bright red birds. I even added a couple of die-cut birds, one on the sentiment and one on the branch, for a little added dimension to the scene. I also think this stamp would look gorgeous embossed in white and then with an inked background to create the look as if all those branches were covered in frost or snow. This stamp, Santa's Visit, is really fun to color. I love how the sketchy lines in the sky add to the magical feeling of Santa's late night cruise across the sky. I also love how this is one of those stamps that has everything in it. You just need to add a sentiment and your card is complete. For a fun added touch that did not compete with the detailed image, I distressed one corner and folded it back, revealing a stamped text background behind. Again, I hope to have a video for you in the near future demonstrating my coloring techniques with this stamp. It certainly looks much more complicated than it actually is. Next up is another little bird. I love this little bird and his holiday house adorned abode. This is another great stamp that leaves you with a finished looking design with just one stamp. I painted this with Distress Ink re-inkers used as watercolors, and once dry, also added ink to the background using an ink blending tool and foam pads. For our next scenic stamp, Snow Covered, I've made an almost one-layer design by masking the perimeter of my watercolor paper with painter's tape before stamping and painting in the village. After it was dry, I added additional shading with colored pencils. I also created a mask for the houses and added inks to the sky and edges of that inner rectangle before removing the painter's tape that masked the outer perimeter. And finally, how charming is this pair of little friends exchanging gifts on our cling stamp under the trees? For my card, I painted the entire image using Distress Ink re-inkers used as watercolors, but then I decided to spotlight only a portion of the image in the center of my card. For all of these scenic stamps, I think it's an added bonus that most are not Christmas specific, and they can be used for thank you cards, winter thinking of you cards, and even for winter birthdays or masculine cards. Next, I'm really excited to share with you some stamps and dies that I would consider personal essentials. And what makes them essentials for me is that they can be used in multiple ways and for multiple occasions and seasons throughout the year. First is our creative die set Snowflake Stitch Frame. I really love this set. And when used for holiday cards, the stitching definitely is reminiscent of snowflakes, but I don't think it's too specific, and I think it could be used any time of year. I think it's helpful with this to see the actual dies, so here's a snapshot of my set. I've also included a snapshot of of 3 pieces cut with the smallest 3 dies in the set. And for these next 2 cards, here's a look at those. I use painter's tape to mask off the stitched portion of the die cut panel before stamping, painting, and inking my panel. Then, once complete, I remove the painter's tape to reveal the white stitched area. I love how this adds instant detail and depth without any extra layers on the card. These dies can also be used to create frames or window style cards by running them through your die cutting machine in different configurations. Here I used the largest and one of the smaller dies, which allowed me to cut a frame which also had that beautiful stitching around the outside. And here's an example of what that looks like on a finished card. And finally, if you prefer working with a rectangular card or you just want to get more from these square dies, you can combine 2 square pieces, as I've done here, to alter the overall shape. There are so many possibilities with this set, and I feel the stitching really adds so much to the finished look of the cards. The next die set that is on my personal essentials list is the Antique Frame set. This can be used for any season, but it is really great for creating vintage styled, elegant looking holiday cards. I love it with distress inked and painted backgrounds. And here's a snapshot of what the dies look like in real life. And just like the Snowflake Stitch Frame, these can also be run through the die cutting machine together in order to cut frames. And the snapshot on the right shows some of the smaller frames. And here's a look at the look of a larger, thicker frame. And there's just so many different ways that this set can be used. I also really like the look when you combine the antique frame edge with our creative die set called Cutout Borders. Or as shown on the right, you can use the smaller frame dies to cut windows, which you can then embellish with dies or a winter scene in the background. This leaves the perfect space below for a die cut or a stamped sentiment. Here are a few card ideas using these versatile dies. On the left, I've used one of the frames. I inked it and also stamped it with the text from our footnote stamp to add to the antique look. And on the right, you can see where a simple panel was cut using the die, and I then layered my focal point, the snowflake, right on top. For this next card, I used a narrow frame around the outer perimeter of the card. And to be honest, when I was making this card, I just felt like it didn't quite look done. But once I added that frame, I instantly felt like it finished it off. And on this autumn-themed card, I cut a piece of cardstock to the standard card size, 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. I then positioned the largest die in the set on that panel and ran it through my die cutting machine. The outer portion that remained is what I used on the perimeter of this scene. And as I mentioned before, I was really happy with the look when combining the stitching from our creative die set Cutout Borders with this die set. And here's a look at this on a finished card. The last frame I am really loving in this release is called Holly Frame. You can add so many elements inside of it. Here I kept the color scheme neutral and I added a stamped and fussy cut deer, but that interior space would also be great for a stamped or a die cut sentiment. I have also used this frame with a cute critter image. By keeping the color scheme for the frame and the background tone on tone, it adds visual interest without distracting from the primary focal point. Again, there are so many possibilities with this particular die. Lastly, our Be Merry collection has 2 new background stamps. Once you stamp these, you will really be in love with the look. I was just so impressed once I stamped them. And I think they're fun for both cute and elegant holiday designs, but they could be used any time of year. Here are 3 cards where I've used them. The detailed patterns remain subtle when stamped in a tone-on-tone color scheme, but these unique patterns, they just really add something special to each card where they've been used. Thanks so much for tuning in today to take a peek at some snowy scenes and some of my personal essentials from our brand new Be Merry holiday collection. All of the new stamps, dies, and designer paper will be available in our online store beginning August 11th. Stay tuned here and on our blog for more sneak peeks, teasers, and a closer look at all of the new goodies, as well as card ideas from myself and the other Penny Black designers. And if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also connect with Penny Black on our website, blog, Facebook page, on Instagram, Twitter, shop our online store, and see lots of card making tutorials here on our YouTube channel. And I've linked to all of these in the YouTube description box below. Happy stamping!